What's good, YouTube? Over the past couple of years, our traps have been getting power crept in the game, and not just by the rising, amazing spell and trap removal that's been introduced, such as Cosmic Cyclone, Heavy Storm Duster. Yes, there's been an increase in that, but that's not the only reason that traps are going to the wayside. Our traps are going to the wayside because we've got freaking little critters running out of our hand and destroying entire turns. That's right, hand traps are kind of becoming a problem at this point. Hand traps are just zooming around everywhere, and we're cramming as many of them as we can into a single deck. 13? Not enough. 15, there we go. Really, almost half the decks are hand traps in some of these top cut lists. How unhealthy does that sound to you? That you are trying to draw multiple counters to your opponent during their turn for their opening turn from the hand. I feel like we've kind of come to a point where we have so many hand traps that do amazing things that traps just are beginning to become obsolete completely, and traps have to do even more. We'll get to that later after we talk about our unhealthy hand traps. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is probably the most powerful created out of all of them, and that's why it holds its ridiculous $75 price point as of today in our current meta, when this video was made for anyone who watches later. But during either player's turn, it's able to stop 3 different things: adding a card from the deck to the hand, special summoning from the deck, or sending a card from the deck to the graveyard. So if you're trying to mill, it can negate. If you're trying to special summon with something as lame as Mystic Tomato, you can negate. And adding any card is probably the biggest point. Rhoda? Later. And that's a card that's at 1 for no reason. But Ash Blossom definitely just screams, you do too much. Oh, why not be a zombie tuner on top of it so certain strategies just get even extra from you? Seems real nice. But it's definitely just a sign that they're giving too much ability for going second. This might have been their way originally of saying, hey, you know, we already gave them a 6th card versus a 5th card, and that doesn't seem to work. So let's let them play back during their turns. But at this point, it's starting just to become, how much can I play back at you during your turn and then get advantage going second? And I think that's fine for the game. We have pros such as Marcelo that went and made a deck for going second because of this strategy, but I do think it's starting to get out of hand. The one that's really out of hand right now is Droll and Lockbird, since we've created so many cards that let you interact with your opponent's hand during their turn that you can just wipe their hand before they even play a card. I think any kind of FTK should be just smitten, just wiped from the board, and they tried to control it over in Japan. They put Trickstar Reincarnation to 1 in the OCG. But here we just have it at full power for now, and I am not okay with it. Droll and Lock has always been very powerful, but hasn't found its way into the meta for a while. It's found its way into cheese decks, into decks that would like have fun trying to do it and wouldn't succeed too much. But now we have ways to consistently do it, and it's naturally countering the meta. That's a problem. That's how Trickstar's getting into the top 16. It's actually just naturally there in their deck. And I want other decks besides Spirals to top, but not relying on a degenerate card like this that just gives you the ability to potentially wipe your opponent's full hand depending on the cards that you already had, since we have so many of them now. Perhaps the most balanced hand trap that's running around now is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So it's a hard once per turn here, like its sisters and the other cards, and I think that's great. I think it's fine to have that once per turn clause, and very healthy to have that once per turn clause put into these cards. I want most hand traps to be a hard once per turn, because if you could just fire them off throughout, that would be crazy. But Ghost Ogre just destroys a card that is already face up on the field activating. I think that's as balanced as it gets. It's a 1-for-1 that helps them continue on to most of their strategies that can't even activate on hanger. I definitely think in checks and balances, it's pretty nice. Like, cards that activate when they're played, it's not hitting them. So I really do like how much they seem to put into her. I also like that they let her do it when it's face up on the field, so you could like E-telly her out or do certain things if you see something coming. I like everything about how they shaped Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. I think she is the best example of a balanced hand trap. Now, her sister didn't see play in a lot of metas. Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries here. Didn't see plays in a lot of meta. But if we line all the hand traps we've shown versus Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, it's very obvious that Ash Blossom is the most insane one. Ghost Reaper may wipe an entire boss monster out of your opponent's deck, but there's so many ways to go into other things, such as Borlow Dragon for spirals or firewalls if they manage to do it turn 1 and they hit your double helix. I really think that Ghost Reaper has proven itself a few times, like being able to wipe Dante and crush Beatrice and the other Dante out of the extra deck, but it still just feels like sometimes that's not enough because they can adapt strategies in their extra deck to counter it. So I feel like, while, hey, I just wiped your main monster out of your deck, that doesn't sound balanced, right? But it is, in some senses, still balanced because strategies can continue forward. Now, we need a way to stop these hand traps. That's what I'm here to figure out. We need a way to stop all these hand traps from being able to activate freely turn 1. And sorry, I'm sick. I'm going to take a quick drink. But I think Simo brought up a great point while he was here, and that's Psyframe Gear Gamma is what already does that, but it's very limited in how it can do it. It can only counter those traps if you haven't put a monster. And a lot of the monsters you're summoning searches. So like you summon Joker, you get Ashed. You summon Joker, you get Drolled. And Gamma can't activate anymore here because you need to have no monsters on the field in order to activate it. That's pretty rough, right? That's what you need to have. On top of that, you need to play a Garnet. And this is a hand trap too, but at least it's a hand trap that's trying to counter other hand traps in some senses. But realistically, you're trying to use it against your opponent going second because it's designed for you to use it going second. Now, I hate create-a cards, but I had to make one to show an example of what I would make to stop all these. Master Hand, the hand trap pun here, and I gave it giant hand stats just to do it. When your opponent activates the effect of a card from the hand, you can discard this card from your hand or tribute this card you control, negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. You can only use this effect of Master Hand once per turn. Now, I probably should have just said negate the effect instead, because negating the activation kind of lets it go past its hard once per turn clause if you stop its activation completely. But I like the fact that I gave it the stats to be able to be summoned as a level 4 that's insanely strong. And people pointed out when I showed them on stream, oh, it breaks the stats. No, no, no. There are plenty of hand traps that break the small stats. The whole point is that he's the master. I hate create-a cards overall, but I couldn't think of another way to show you guys an example of a counter to hand traps, and it being a hand trap that basically only interacts with hand traps but also can commit itself to the board, making it not completely useless should it face something else. Like, you can play this in stun decks, just put it face up and start ramming it if there's somehow a hand trap that hurts your stun decks. With most stun decks don't care about hand traps, period. So there's also that. I mean, I guess you could hit their card Demise, their Pot of Duality, but overall they're trying to summon monsters and set traps. So I really do like the master hand feel here for most main decks, being able to say, no, I'm going to stop that hand trap and get to continue their initial play. And I hate that the answer is a hand trap to hand traps, but even traps are becoming hand traps to keep up. Evenly Matched is so hyped because it has a hand trap effect. It's not just these little critters running around now, it's also our regular traps have to power creep to this point. At least Evenly Matched, they heavily edited its activation window for being a hand trap and conditions. They hit 2 things, yet it is still so powerful for being able to activate from the hand, because going second, you just go, okay, enter battle phase, end of battle phase, is that okay? Evenly Matched. It's the same as going towards damage step. You have to confirm with your opponent. So there are even counters already played in main decks right now, such as set rotation, that stop Evenly Matched. But it just shows its price point at $55, $60 out the gate, that it's really good, really hyped. And I think continuing to give unbalanced hand trap effects needs to be checked. Astrograph's the perfect example. It relies on both you or your opponent and helps you resource back the deck. It's 2,500, yet we're not playing it in just any deck. It's only fitting itself in Pendulum Magicians. That's a sign. That's a sign that, you know, these other cards here are just better than something like that in 2017. It's crazy the point we've come to. Thanks for watching. How would you solve the hand trap problem? Maybe a negation spell speed 2 trap that can be activated from hands with monster effects when you can control no cards, like giving traps the evenly match thing, and it can only be activated from hand when you control no cards, so that you can set it, commit it to the field, and risk it versus spell and trap destructions. How would you feel about a card like that? So far, most monster negation has to be like Solemn Strike, where you pay 1,500, or Divine Wrath, where you pitch a card. Would that card be too powerful? The being able to pitch it out of hand to stop monster effects. How would you solve this problem where we're cramming 15 hand traps into a deck? How would you get there, boys? And the card not even mentioned here is Maxi, which is at 1. We'll talk about that if it moves somewhere on the list. But as a one of, we still see it pop up here and there.